Hello and good morning. Welcome to this morning's session. Come with us on an IEP journey. Pack for what you know and learn as you go. Presented by Dr. Jennifer Yales, Noreen Lippincott, Sara Wildman, Heather DiFede, and Leo Mapagu. I'm Celise Heron, Program Support Specialist, and I am thrilled to be your moderator for this breakout session. First, a few logistics. This session will be recorded and archived on the conference agenda page after the conference for 1 month. Closed captioning is available by clicking on the CC button on the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. The interpretation icon is in the same area and will provide access to Spanish translation. We will ensure the ASL interpreters are spotlighted along with the presentation and the presenters. Please ensure your volume is muted to avoid background distractions while the presenters are speaking. We encourage you to engage with others in the chat, and when possible, keep your camera on so we can see your fabulous faces. And with that, I turn it over to our wonderful presenters.
Good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us. Why don't we take a minute to, while I'm introducing our team, go ahead and take a minute to introduce yourself and share your name and your job role in the chat, if you would, please. Our team I'm Jennifer Yales, and I'm the executive consulting helping to direct the high quality IEP grant project. We are led by the East County SELPA and the Santa Clara County Office of Education SELPA. And Heather DiFede is the executive director of East County SELPA. And Leo Mapagu is our executive director from Santa Clara County SELPA. And the two of those county SELPAs have the grant, and we are the team that helped make up that grant project. I have with me today Noreen Rodriguez Lippincott, Program Administrator. Hi, Noreen. And I also have with me Sara Wildman, our coordinator for the grant. Hi, Sara. So the three of us will be helping to present to you all today. So thanks for adding your role and your name in the chat so we can get to know you. All right, so I wanted to talk a little bit about grounding ourselves in what we recognize as our project. And I want to start with that the IEP is a journey. In fact, it is composed of many days and time and people. And so we are calling it a journey rather than, and we want to move away from that one-time kind of transactional event when we think of the word IEP. So envision before, after, during, and after the meeting for this IEP journey. And during this journey and throughout this journey, we are many people. We are many faces in this experience. We have parents, we are students and educators. And we also recognize that all members in this journey have value. So as for for our grant, I wanted to share with you briefly that what our vision is. And for the high quality IEP grant, we envision a future in which all LEAs, so school districts, in partnership with families, have the capacity to develop high quality IEPs, utilizing best practices, which result in meaningful participation for all and educational benefit for students. And we want to root this vision in equitable practices, which intentionally removes barriers for our students, our families, and even our educators, resulting in positive academic and social emotional outcomes. And so how do we do this? We work towards, and we are working towards, increasing meaningful participation in that IEP process, supporting the implementation of our soon-to-be state-released IEP templates. So if you weren't familiar, the state is adopting an IEP template for the first time in California. So this project will help to create training and resources around that template. And we're also working to building the capacity of families, students, and educators around IEP best practices. So that's what helps ground us in this project. today's objective, we want to create awareness around why meaningful participation is important and review ways to cultivate it during that IEP journey. We hope to provide you resources to grow this meaningful participation for families, students, and educators in your local context. And so some things you'll see are checklists, agendas, and these resources are growing from our project and the people we've been collaborating with. So we also want you to be able to collaborate with your fellow participants in this conference to increase our connection with one another's experience, knowledge, and perspectives.
Yeah.
All right.
So
Go ahead.
thank you. Sorry, I was getting off of mute. So welcome everybody. I'm so glad that you are here. We recognize that people learn very differently. And so some people just like the slides and some people just want to find a way to take notes. So we have created what we call a processing guide. You can click the image or with the QR code, there's a bit.ly link, and it's also in the chat right now. And so that is just a way that we have helped organize notes if everyone needs it. So here we are starting our presentation, and we really want to lay this foundation. We're going to start with this concept of what we've been focusing all year long is just on meaningful participation. And in order to be grounded in the how, we're really going to be starting with our why. So here is this beautiful picture right here. We've been using a book that's called Design for Belonging by Susie Wise. And she has amazing graphics and really talks about what it means to belong in all the different places that you can. We've built a lot of our why in looking at this belonging and how can we make this IEP journey one of belonging. There's a term coined by psychologist Malahi, which is called flow. Flow is a term for the state of being that comes from full immersion at the task at hand. You'll recognize that your group is in flow when getting to work feels authentic and deep, when conversations matter, when hurdles are hard and insurmountable. But when you're in flow, you're not wasting your resources on wondering if you're part of a community. You already know that you're there. So before we get started, we just want to take a moment to just have you reflect. Think about a time where you felt flow. Think about the people you are with. Are you with other adults or students? Think about how your body feels or moves, what your heart is feeling. When and where have you sense of belonging interact with the feelings of flow? Go ahead and put them in the chat if you feel comfortable. I know for me, I feel like I am in flow when I'm in tune with the others that I'm in the room with, when I feel that there are that we are communicating well and that people feel like they value me. Is there anybody else that would like to say? Yes, so when you're leading professional development and working alongside other educators. Thank you. Thank you, Jen. With friends and eating lunch and food. So as we continue our presentation, just think about this idea of flow and what that means. All right. So meaningful participation. We start with belonging because to us, you have to have a sense of belonging in order to truly have full, meaningful participation. We believe meaningful participation is creating opportunities throughout the IEP journey that really reinforce belonging and the value of all IEP team members to co-create and work towards the shared vision. So what is this idea of meaningful participation? When we've looked at the research, We found that there's many definitions or interpretations of both what is meaningful and then what is participation. But we've put together some essential concepts that we really believe address that meaningful participation could look like through this IEP journey. So I'm going to show you these, and as you see them connecting, think about ways that you have done this when you are with people. So really meaningful participation is about communication, sending, receiving information, making sure that it's accessible, that you're doing it frequently, that there's a level of understanding, and then there's collaboration, really the opportunity to participate and elevate people's thinkings, not just one person giving the information, but really this idea of this being active participation. So that way people feel like they have this opportunity to participate, that it's not just one person. We really think about shared decision-making. So instead of just an individual, that we are all part of this team and that we all are making decisions together. And then of course, deliberately inclusive. Being inclusive doesn't just mean being at the table, as many of these speakers have talked about. Even if those at that amazing mod squad, they're not just being in the room, but really like presuming excellence and not just making assumptions about people. And we also then want to make sure that we have psychological safety. Creating that safe that allows others to be their full selves. That means they can exhibit their race, ethnicity, and any other part of their identity without judgment. And really, it's iterative. It's not just a one and done, that we have this commitment to continuously evolve. And finally, we must be present. Each of us must give ourselves fully in these moments. And all of these concepts are what really lead us to have trust. So there's this idea that we have used that a lot of the time, IEPs traditionally have been very transactional. If you see this picture right here, where there's a family on one side of the table and everybody else is on the other side of the table and they're making decisions for them. But we're really looking to make IEP process more of a transformative process, where we're elevating the whole child and having a strength-based approach. So what does all this have to do with this IEP that we're trying to have you guys help pack for? So Jen and Noreen are going to go through some ideas of how to incorporate meaningful participation and then some examples for that. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. So what does this have to do with the IEP? Well, it helps us to meet our legal obligations, and we're going to go through what that looks like. We have procedural and substantive obligations that are required to happen from the federal government, and they tell us, and then and state. And then it enhances student and parent, school, community relationships and partnerships, this meaningful participation. And we're also preparing our students for post-secondary success. All right. So helps us meet our legal obligations. What does this mean? Procedurally, we have specific requirements of the law when we develop an IEP. There are our must-dos, right? And these can be very linear and easy to explain. Checkbox, check it off, we included it. But there's also another part of legal obligation called substantive obligation. And I don't think we talk about it enough. Those are obligations of IDEA that require IEP teams to develop and implement a plan that is designed to provide educational benefit for that specific student. So this is when that individualizing comes in. You may have heard in the past, don't copy one IEP from the next. That's because you may have met the requirement to fill out the IEP, those procedural IEPs, but that substantive piece comes from the individualization and personalization for that specific student. So let's look at some examples of how we meet our legal obligation through meaningful participation. So first one is participation. So according to IDEA, we have a legal obligation to include our parents. So what does this look like? Most of the time, it looks like one-way communication, meaning we send them a prior written notice. We give them procedural safeguard notices. This is what IDEA says we must do. There are student level decision making and planning that go under IDEA as well. Parents have to give consent. In order to have eligibility, the determination, they have to be involved in it. They have to be invited to that team meeting. They have to participate in that meeting. When it comes to placement and services, they need to give consent and be a part of that as well. And then we need to inform and give them access to any kind of student records. So this is what IDEA says, that legally, procedurally, we have to have parents participate in the IEP process. Same goes for students, except for when students procedurally, it says whenever appropriate, the child with a disability. It doesn't give a specific age. It just says whenever appropriate. So they be a part of the team. And the adults in the life determine that. And then transition services say beginning no later than that first IEP when he or she turns 16. If it's determined again by the IEP team, they need to come to that IEP team. And then that's when we start talking about post-secondary cross agency collaboration and the needs. And then at a certain age, 18 years old under state law, the IEP in itself gets transferred to the student at the age of majority. So at the age of 18, the student then takes over. So our theme here procedurally is whenever it's appropriate as determined by the adults, we include the student, but at 18, they take over their rights. So this is all what IDEA says. Same for procedural participation. There are procedural requirements when it comes to an IEP team. We must have the parent of the child, no less than one regular education teacher. And this is to show you that there are requirements under 300-321 that says who must come to this IEP team. So these are procedural requirements. What happens here is, do you want to go, Noreen?
So
Oh, you're on mute.
you can't hear me?
You're good.
Okay. So what we see here is, unfortunately, pretty often the current reality for meetings. And so this is a statistic about the percentage of speaking time by role during IEP meetings. And so I want you to take a look and just, if you can, type in the chat, what do you notice? What do you notice as you look at this visual? Does it look familiar? Does it seem different than what you experience? Okay, thanks, Jill. So yeah, it's showing a majority of time special ed teachers talking. Yes. Well, first, as we mentioned, how often are students actually at the table? And when they are, that they're speaking 3% of the time. Teachers are talking. Yep, I'm seeing it looks very familiar. That is a lot of pressure for the special ed teacher. Yeah, not very much family participation. Okay, so thank you for participating in that piece. And so if we go to that next slide, what we have here is truly a missed opportunity. And this is just calling to my heart even more, having just come from this session this morning from the Mod Squad about that, how true it is about needing to grow the voice, that voice and contributions for all team members to make the IEP really be what it's meant to be able to actually have those transformative outcomes and not be, what would they call it? The crash and burn or the disservice that it can be if it's not done to that true benefit and substantive obligation for students.
So let's walk through some examples of procedural and substantive obligations, and let's see what this might look like when we address our requirements for develop, reviewing, and revising the IEP. So you'll notice procedurally, IDEA spells out how do you develop, review, and revise an IEP. For example, you'll see strengths of a child must be included, the concerns of parents for enhancing education of their child, who needs to be there, what the regular education teacher needs to do, not only be there, but what they need to include. So how they participate, right? What are they supposed to give input on?
So now we know what must be included in the development or that content piece of the IEP. And now how do we make sure that substantively we're putting in what each student really needs and taking account that input from all team members? So one thing we need to really do is consider the strengths of the child. I think we've all experienced or heard that an IEP can be very deficit based. And so we want to flip that and really look at monitoring that deficit thinking. What can the child do instead of what they can't do? I had a parent say, I don't want to hear that my child can't count to 20. Tell me, can they count to 5? Do they know 4 numbers? Tell me what they can do. We want to ensure that all team members are able to voice these strengths, not only in the classroom, but maybe in the playground, maybe at home, maybe in other services that they go to, because this really gives that broader perspective of when and where a child's strengths really shine, so we can build on it. So we've had a few little probing suggestions here, really emphasizing that open-ended question and remaining student-centered and strength-based. So you see here, tell me more about what the student can do as it relates to math, as it relates to being with friends. Let's take a minute, and here's really ensuring that voice to truly go around the table and everyone gets to share a strength. Based on our expertise with this student, what accommodations could maximize their learning? So really looking at this true deep communication and conversation. So when we look at this, we do need to talk about the concerns, right? But we also want families to truly be able to speak to their experience as well and have time before the IEP meeting to think about their contributions. I don't know how many of you have either been at the table with parents or been a parent at the table, and you ask or get asked, what does your child do well? And you get that deer in headlights look. And as a parent, I know I've come to the table and all I have on my mind are the concerns. So really being able to address concerns and think about it beforehand so that you can plan for how to address the concerns and build forward. So here we put in a couple other prompts. Share with the team when this happens most. Thank you for sharing your concerns. And then you'll see that little resource that we'll highlight later. And thank you for putting that link in the chat, Jen. One of our resources is called Building on My Strengths. And we actually have several versions for the team members to be able to work on and plan prior to that meeting, to truly be able to build on how to just build that plan around concerns. So, oh, sorry. It's hard when you're not sharing your own screen. Another piece being that requirement around the general education teacher. And we know how key this role is. So there being a general education teacher, it is a requirement, but what does that really look like when you're at the meeting? And really building on their expertise, making sure they feel they're ready to share their ideas, making sure they feel they're allowed to share what they feel they need to say. We've heard from some general ed teachers, we don't know what to say, what's expected of us, what's safe. So just having that collaboration, being able to discuss strategies, what's been effective, and being able to speak to where they should be and are hopefully spending a majority of their time.
So let's look at another example between procedural and substantive. So procedurally, here's one example in Ed code where a statement of the child's present levels needs to be written. It's a procedural requirement.
So let's look at what this could look like in our dream vision of people, everyone around the table being able to have their voice and their contributions heard. So we're going to talk about Jackson, who is a second grader, and this is Jackson's mom. And talking about present level, she says, I find that Jackson loves to look at pictures and be creative. When I just talk to her, I often have to repeat my directions, and she gets frustrated. When we sit down together and do her homework, I use pictures and draw a lot. And then we hear from her general education teacher. She seems to get nervous when she's asked to read aloud. She shuts down and won't speak. I've started to pull Jackson into a small group and review with her the selected reading prior to the class activity. This will allow her to choose whether she reads aloud or not, or whether she might read with a partner. So really individualizing. We hear this team starting to do that. And then next, we're going to hear from the LEA administrator. Jackson is very generous and kind when with her friends. She's a leader in social settings, especially in activities she has confidence in. I find she's always willing to help her teacher and other students. She doesn't shy away from responsibility. And then we've got her special education teacher. Jackson's grade level reading fluency has improved to 87% accuracy. I've observed her in the classroom being able to participate in reading activities. She's incorporating taking her time before reading. And then we're going to hear from a service provider. Jackson has made a lot of progress with her R articulation. She does self-correct when given the time to do so. She shared with me that she likes when she gets to practice with someone before having to read aloud. And last but not least, we've got Jackson herself. She says, I like to stay in class with my friends. They help me learn and I feel good when I learn with them. My favorite is listening to my teacher read because I feel shy talking in front of the class. My teacher is really nice. So we see here this opportunity for true partnership, true teamwork and collaboration with that intent of keeping Jackson's strengths, her preferences, where she excels at the center as we learn about her present level, then use that to drive forward the plan around her IEP for that year. And we put this image here of the child at the center, surrounded by her family, the support providers, that whole team, because individualizing the IEP really does come from those multiple perspectives of those who really know the student in all of the settings. And that saying of it really takes a village, right? This should come into play as well when we are making a plan for our students' IEPs. So this notion of enhancing relationships, partnerships, I don't know if we really talk about it too much when we're talking about IEPs and the planning. And so we really have focused in on the meaningful participation and wanting to build partnerships and relationships. Making sure we have skills for allowing for conflict. Everyone's not always going to agree, and that's okay. But we need to have a structure for allowing for diverse insights and ideas, having the intent of leading toward the destination of inclusive decision-making, helping us avoid our blind spots. We only each know what we know until we know more. Creating opportunity to grow from one another, really allowing for clarity, for representation, again, enhancing our problem-solving capabilities, and if there is conflict, being able to be productive within that conflict and moving forward. And third of all, we know that this isn't just about students in school. We know that this is about post-secondary success and what life looks like beyond those school doors. So we want to remember that we can also build student agency through meaningful participation. And again, I think we're driving home this topic of meaningful participation, but really helping build these skill sets for students. So making sure that they have stronger self-advocacy, stronger self-determination skills, and really building their self-confidence. We want students to gain greater knowledge of their disability and accommodations. We hear so many times that students either don't even realize they have an IEP or they don't know why they have an IEP. Really allowing students from the youngest age to play a decision-making role, leading to their own engagement and accountability, and therefore leading toward improved transition outcomes.
Yes, so thank you, Noreen and Jen, for going over some of those examples. When we're really looking at what are some strategies and then resources that we have in California and through other states' programs to really cultivate meaningful participation. So one of those things that we want to review is just talking about some of the ideas that we have either come up with ourselves, and also what we've asked the field when we have done presentations throughout this year, is really what ideas do people have to cultivate these connections. Our first one really is about communication. So we hear that word a lot, but really supportive communication is what we want to say, is just that it's frequent. How often are you communicating? Is it just that one time at the IEP meeting? Because then that doesn't feel very collaborative. And so we're honest and accessible. Do we have a translation like what we have right now in this session, where we have an ASL interpreter, we have a Spanish just in case. So knowing what we need to do to support communication with our families, our other educators, and our students. Really, to have connections, we need to have empathy. Understanding that families are coming from all different places. They may be just finding out that their student has a disability, and they may be grieving. They may feel guilt. They have gratitude for the support. They may have some anxiety. So just really understanding, trying to gain perspective and understanding from a different point of view. Also knowing that we need to have respect. Acknowledging the mutual validity and value of all points of view. So are we honoring culture and diversity? And are we treating each other with dignity and respect? Often we know that cultivating connections takes time. I think when we have asked the field about some of the barriers that we have to cultivating connections, to have meaningful participation, time is something that comes up quite often. Time is precious, but how do we make sure that we are taking a priority for one another? And really the accessibility. Are we addressing the acronyms, the jargon? Are we making sure that people really understand what we're saying? If we say FAPE, do they know what that means? If we say LRE, do we know what that means? So really being able to understand our audience and understand that we need to be able to address those things. And flexibility, offering options for, I think one of the beauties of us having to turn to online for so many things, this conference, for example, can we have web-based meetings? Can we have teleconferences? What can we do to be flexible so that way we can ensure that all are able to participate? And really assuming goodwill. We heard this a lot from parents and educators when we had a survey out to the field at the beginning of our grant cycle that started in July, is what do you wish that people would have known? And a lot of times they said just to assume best intention. We assume goodwill. We know that we don't always make the best decisions, but we are all really trying to focus on the student. Of course, then some other ideas is to have equity, being responsive to the unique circumstances of each family's culture and identity. really having the opportunity, so encouraging involvement. When we're creating the space, we were talking about flow earlier. When we have this idea of flow, that those are the things that can connect, create connections. And really just being curious, asking clarifying questions. Don't just avoid jumping to conclusions and making assumptions. And all of these ideas, plus more, I know that Noreen just wrote in the chat, if there's anything else that connects with you guys, please put those down, because we're always trying to get information from others. I'm really listening to what everyone is experiencing. All of these, when we are really doing all of these things and cultivating connections, these help to build trust. And in our research, we saw that without trust, parents were less likely to accept the suggestions of the educational professionals and did not value the need to work towards collaboration. So without trust, there is no connective force or incentive to continue to collaborate. And when we feel this psychological safety and when we are doing things to build trust, this is going to lead to our engagement. So this is something else that we have found, is that there is this continuum of engagement. Really, sometimes people at the early stages are just making decisions. They're just informing the parents. They're saying, this is the time the meeting is, this is the date the meeting is going to be. Those decisions are just the information. But we move on to hopefully starting to involve. So we're involving students and parents. They're involved, asked to participate. It's still being led by school staff, but at least this time there's a bit more of voice and listening. And then moving up on our continuum is to engaging. Really, this is where there's true shared decision-making and actions. There's this higher degree of trust. And ultimately, we want to be leading in this engagement. And that really is just where parents and students and school staff, they're working together in this leadership role. Everyone has a role and everyone is considered a leader, because we're really trying to say that it is not just the educator making these decisions. It is really a whole team effort. So really, as we've shared, we want to hear from you. We are always incorporating different ideas that we have heard from the field to know what it is that you guys are experiencing, what it is that we can do to support you. So what are ideas come to mind to cultivate meaningful participation and ensuring this idea of flowing? So go ahead and take some time and put that in the chat. I'll give you guys a second to do that. There's lots of different ideas out there. And as we continue to show some of our ideas and our resources out there, it may also then trigger some ideas of different ways that you want to cultivate, ways that you've tried or ways that you wish you could try to cultivate meaningful participation in ensuring flow. I'm going to go ahead and let Noreen share some of the resources that we've been creating.
And I think it's always hard to time with
Chat.
that virtual flow. So I see a couple coming in, so I'm actually going to pause and just take a look at a couple of these, because earlier in the conversation, I saw a couple comments about how someone's students stopped attending their IEP meetings because they didn't feel, that their voice was actually being heard. And that is obviously something that many teams do experience. So know that we as a team do really live this work. We are, many of us, also parents of children with IEPs, and for myself as well, I'm learning to navigate this as a professional and a parent. And I myself have been at that table and had a sad meeting as well. So this is really work that speaks to our hearts as well. And we really hope to surpass many of these barriers as we do this work. Let's see. So we talked, Celeste talked about taking time, being transparent, and there's trust. It's so key. Taylor, I feel like I can use some of the resources. I think, are you saying maybe some of the resources we're sharing, hopefully?
Yeah, I was
Yes,
specifically talking about like some of the checklists and things like
perfect.
that. Just so people kind of know how to get involved and know what to do and be effective
Mhm.
and ways they can contribute. I feel like oftentimes like knowledge and understanding of roles is a barrier for our IEP meetings.
Very much so. Yeah, that is very, very true. And then let's
Noreen,
see, Ave. Oh, go ahead, Jen.
yeah,
Sorry.
I just wanted to add that we had a question from a parent in here to say, like, how do parents learn to participate and understand? And I know I have a son myself, like Noreen was saying, our team is full of parents with children with IEPs. And as an 18-year-old son with autism, when I go to a meeting, even having been in the field for as long as I have been, and they ask me what is my son's strengths or weaknesses, I like go blank, right? And so I found that, and Noreen's going to share this more, that building on my strengths protocol. Okay, first of all, I wanted to say that how do parents learn to participate? I think as educators and parents, as we get the opportunities and we take them, to be involved at the site if possible and communicate with our teachers, parent conferences, setting up meetings, even between, we're developing a relationship with them that then we can start to feel comfortable to even speak, because sometimes that's even a barrier for our families. We have embedded those resources. So I'm talking specifically to this anonymous participant who put this in the chat. We have embedded resources and found that families don't know the basics, the foundation around IDEA. And with just cause, right? They didn't go to school like we all did to learn about this. So we have some basic resources that will help them to build up their knowledge, right? That gap in knowledge. And then also taking that time to reflect and use something like building on my strengths to put together their thoughts prior to coming to the meeting, because something emotionally happens when we step foot in that meeting that we just sometimes forget everything and we go into like protect my child mode and forget about whatever I wrote, whatever I was thinking before. So this allows a parent to write down, reflect what they're feeling and seeing, and then bring that with them to the meeting. And even if they didn't share it, they could share it with the educator themselves.
Yeah, thanks, Jen. I there's actually quite a few comments now. So yeah, if I miss anything, please jump in. And I think to add to what Jen said, that continuum that was showed a couple slides ago, that continuum of engagement, even just awareness, not only on the part of the educators, but on the part of families is really key, because as we've said, we want to assume best intentions and everyone's doing the best they know. And so if they're following their training that might have been part of their, teacher credential or whatnot, they're following what that procedural obligation is. They're informing, they're sending the invitation. But now we've got this new awareness. And so maybe this is something a parent could take to their teacher, as we build that relationship and say, hey, I just learned about this continuum of engagement. Is this something that we could maybe work toward building together? Because really, we do want everyone to feel not only empowered, but safe to speak up, safe to disagree, and safe to work together toward finding solutions, as opposed to, I saw here someone said, I think it was Emily, that some parents don't speak up, they just answer yes, no. And there's so many reasons why that might be. So how do we get to those reasons and then be able to account for those? So yeah, these are so amazing. Thank you all for putting this in here. Jill talked about
Noreen,
yes.
yeah, one thing I share often, I'm sorry if you've heard this, is when I went to my son's IEP years ago, I had to bring a colleague with me, and literally, I think all they said was the word Matthew, right? And I almost attacked. Like I went up and my friend had to put her hand on my knee to tell me to relax, because I am in mama bear mode, right? That is I am here to protect this child. I'm not trying to be rational right now. I'm just protecting. So that could possibly just be a barrier. And that goes beyond even having a doctorate. Like, this is not about that anymore. This is not about knowledge, right?
It all goes out the window, getting that primitive brain. Yes, Jill mentioned retraining teachers around the new mindset. There is actually research around barriers for IEPs, and there is a known piece missing within pre-service training around being able to build collaborative relationships between teachers and families. And so know that this actually finally has been identified. Don't know why it wasn't before, but it is on the forefront and horizon for starting to be included as they redesign teaching credential programs. So that was exciting to read.
And
And then,
Noreen, as we're
yeah.
looking at the comments, some of the things that are sticking out to me where parents aren't feeling they can say more than yes and no, they're deferring to educators. I wonder, you know, based on some of the work we've been doing, we've been seeing that if the IEP meeting, if we think of the IEP as just that meeting day, and that is our only interaction with our families, it can be overwhelming. But if we have regular communication, it doesn't need to be elaborate, but regular ongoing communication throughout the year with our families, this meeting may not feel so intimidating to them. And they may develop the trust and the relationship so that they feel comfortable at least speaking with some of the special ed providers and the general ed providers that are attending the meetings. And I did see another comment about self-advocacy and a student who is deaf. And I know in our SELPA, our teachers of the deaf and hard of hearing are probably some of the biggest champions of self-advocacy and having students write letters to their teachers about their strengths, their disability or their hearing needs. And it's just amazing what can be done and what is being done in the field. So thanks for sharing that example.
Yes, thank you. And to build on what you were saying, Heather, around that one-time meeting, you know, when you think of team in society, you think of maybe sports or preparing for a play, right? Anything where people get together and build toward something. It's like weekly, right? They practice, then they have a game. They practice, they have a game. They practice and get input, and then they build on that input and improve. And then you have this team, and yes, I'm doing air quotes, but how often does the IEP team meet? It's once a year. So how can we really look at that one-time transaction and create the notion of a true team that does communicate and meet and practice and build toward that culminating activity throughout the year? There's so much good stuff here. I want to call out the cultural differences and how that is so key, especially with I know some cultures have some really key differences that can impede or language barriers as well. Yes, that inherent power differential, it can feel very intimidating coming into, you know, this table full of experts as the parent and really just acknowledging and planning for that built-in power differential. Yes, thank you, Ivan. Our parent and family empowerment centers are such an untapped resource. I know just recently this structure has really been built out and expanded across the state. And so I think this is something our districts and our LEAs can really tap into and market more in order for families to be able to utilize that resource that is now much more expanded across the state. So thank you for sharing. We love that Seeds of Partnership one where you can find your designated center by county. Yeah, definitely.
And part of that work is we are collaborating with the family empowerment centers. We have one locally with Exceptional Family Resource Center and with Robin Ryan at Seeds of Partnership to build upon and leverage the resources and expertise of our family empowerment centers. We're not the only voice in the field, and we have family empowerment centers and Seeds of Partnership throughout the state that have been doing and continue to do great work in supporting our families.
So I want to apologize if I don't see, there's so much amazing, powerful, so many powerful comments here. But I want to take these last few minutes just to orient you to our website and some more of these resources. And so there you see our website. It's highqualityieps.net. And when you go in there, you can either reach it across the top. You'll see a tab called IEP Journey. You can click there. And that will show you the same kind of family, student, educators, or you scroll down a bit. And we have organized it into family, student, educator resources. And if you click into there, you'll also see the resources divided up into before, during, and after, because as we've mentioned, we really do see this as a journey and want to support families, students, and educators throughout that entire process. And so one resource that we've mentioned but want to highlight is called the Building on My Strengths. And this allows all team members to prepare their thoughts and be ready to participate, reinforcing that student-centered IEP experience and taking the pressure off of just showing up and answering on the spot questions. And then another resource we want to highlight is our IEP meeting checklists. And these are also organized into before, during, after. And we have quite a few. You can see here, we've got parent, we've got student, we've got general educator, special educator, and administrative designee, because everyone's role does have some key differences. And though, as someone mentioned earlier, this hopefully helps break down those roles and responsibilities and expectations for each. Another resource we want to highlight is the transition from Part C to Part B. So our little guys coming in at age 3, and how this can be a very big transition for folks. This is a whole nother presentation, but so we do have a resource that helps highlight the differences from the IFSP, which would be 0 to 2 years old, and what it looks like when they turn 3 and enter into the school system. And then we're so excited because we are starting to get our translated documents in. We are a new grant. We just started in July. And so as we are building out the resources for families, it is very important for us to have access for them. And so we're going to have eventually 5 languages. Right now, we've started with having 2 of our documents available in Spanish and building toward additional languages. And then we have another document that is all about building meaningful participation throughout the IEP journey. And we want to acknowledge that each system is in a different place. So this might be something that a team, like a special ed team, could look at for their special ed department. It could be a site, it could be a teacher, whatever your locus of control is, just take and use what you can toward building meaningful engagement and participation for wherever you are in that organization. These I'm so excited about. So these are presentation templates, PowerPoint presentations. We've got an early childhood elementary one, and then we've got a secondary one I'll show in a second, but they are customizable. You can add pictures, you can add voice, image, anything you want to add here, make it your own. It can be the parent showing it, can be the teacher, it can be the student, but really bringing that student voice front and center into their meeting. And so this is the secondary presentation template, really wanting to capture, Bella talked about how she was shown like preschool level things in high school. And so we really want to honor that students need age appropriate, not only visuals, but content to look toward and learn. And then we've got our listserv. So if you are here with us, please go into our website and join our listserv. As our new resources are released, we will be putting them into the website and then sending out emails to keep everyone up to date, because we have so many more things coming out. Like, we're so excited. We've had a really positive response so far. And then we think, oh my gosh, there's so much to come. So please sign up so you can stay informed with what there is. And then we're also on Facebook and is it called X, and Instagram. We have these goals. We reached our first goal on Instagram of reaching 100 followers. Now we want to get 500. We know we can do it with your help. So please connect with us. And yeah, we're so excited to be a part of this work. We're so happy and thankful to be here with you all because this is such an amazing conference. I love all conferences, and I really love this one. So we have 2 minutes. But are there any questions? And I apologize, I haven't been keeping up with the chat. So if anyone else wants to highlight anything, Heather, Jen, Sarah, that's come out over the last few minutes.
Yeah, I think people are excited about the Spanish resources, and our
Cool.
future resources will be in 4 different languages. I mean, our current resources, we're building them in not only Spanish, but in 3 additional languages. So we'll have a total of 5 languages for all of our resources.
Jen, I know we're
sorry,
putting
go ahead.
resources in the chat. We have some requests for the secondary About Me slides and the high school template for presentation. So we have a couple requests for the About Me for high school, if you can put that in the chat.
And those
Yeah,
might
yes.
be in the booth as well, right? If you go to the
They are.
exhibit hall.
Mhm.
Yeah, if you
I
go to the
added them,
exhibit hall
and
into our booth.
I added the secondary, and yep, they're all on our website and at the booth.
But
And
definitely
I
sign up for our
can-
listserv.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I can try to see if I can get to that so the screen shares so you can see how to find that for any of you who want to see that.
So
I
thank
know
you
that it
again.
is lunchtime too. I
That
think.
went
No, one more.
quickly. I thought we had so much time,
Yep.
and then the time ran
Thanks,
out.
everyone.
Thank
Yeah.
you guys so much.
Great.
What an amazing presentation. Thank you, Dr. Jennifer Yales, Heather DiFede, Noreen Rodriguez Lippincott, Sara Wildman, and Leo Mapagu for an amazing presentation. So much great information. And thank you to everyone in attendance for your commitment to our students and their families. It is our mission to accelerate our educational system to innovate, include, and impact outcomes positively for all, from birth to childhood and beyond. The presentation slides and resources can be accessed in the session description section on the conference agenda page. If you have any additional questions, please head to the information booth and you may find the answer there. Be sure to join us at the Inclusion Tune-Up with DJB Diamond. The next session starts at 11:10. Also, don't forget to complete the survey to receive your conference t-shirt. And make sure to visit the social lounge to connect with other attendees. Finally, please stop by the photo booth to take a selfie and share on your socials and tag @SIPInclusion with the hashtag #SIPCon2024. Thank you so much for being here and enjoy the rest of the conference. Happy Friday.